Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm doing today my very first I did do a classic TV review for V, the miniseries, but that kind of delves a little bit into movies as well. So this is my first proper classic TV review, and it is for the fantastic The Professionals, the series that I have such fond memories of as a child. It's a series that started in the late 70s. I remember watching The Professionals on a Sunday night or a Saturday night. I think it was a Sunday night before school, and it was the last thing I was allowed to watch, and then it was bedtime for school the following day. And we used to sit as a family and watch this show, and it was hugely popular in the UK. And it was on the back of massively popular shows in the US like Starsky and Hutch that were very, very popular in the UK. And you had shows in the UK like The Sweeney and things like that that were very, very popular. And they created The Professionals, and it's essentially about a fictional organisation, CI5, which is meant to reflect MI5, that is run by a guy called George Cowley. He's in charge of it, who is played by Gordon Jackson fantastically well. And he had a number of specialists working underneath him, from the police, the military, people like that. But the main two characters that the series focused on was Bodie and Doyle, played by Martin Shaw, who played Doyle, and Lewis Collins, who played Bodie. And they were the two main stars of the show, along with Gordon Jackson. Now, I'm not going to do a full-on review of all the episodes because we'd be here all day. But needless to say, I do have all the episodes. I've got Professionals there. More Professionals. There, all the DVDs. You even got a couple of the box sets. So I'm currently making my way through the whole series again. I haven't watched them for a number of years. And I've got to tell you, I'm absolutely having a ball. Yes, is it dated? Of course it's dated. Running around with flares and, really old-fashioned but cool, really iconic, cool UK cars like the Ford Capri and the Dolly Sprint and things like that. There's so much about this show. It's so iconic. It really, really is. Anybody of a certain age, and by that I mean my age, I'm 45, will have fond memories of this show, The Professionals. It is one of the greatest shows that the UK has ever made. It was shown on ITV. Like I say, it ran from the late 70s, I think 77. I think it ran up right to 1982-83. They did five seasons, 5 series. And I think about 60 episodes, but it's one of those shows where it feels like there were hundreds of episodes, because at the time when it was shown, like I say, it was hugely popular, but for a long time afterwards it wasn't repeated, it wasn't syndicated, it wasn't repeated back on television for a number of reasons. Now, after researching it, you will see statements some places saying that the reason it wasn't repeated, it was all Martin Shaw's fault, because he didn't want it repeating. He didn't want to be typecast as this, rough and ready action star. He was a bit of a lovey. He was a bit of a theatre actor and all that kind of stuff, and he was never a huge fan of the show. And I've actually watched interviews while researching this with Martin Shaw back in the day, in the 90s as well, things like that, where he's revoked this and he's basically said, I have no problem with The Professionals, I don't mind it, they can show it when they want, they can do what they want, never had a problem with it. But then I've also seen there was like a Professionals documentary, I think that Channel 4 produced a good few years ago now, and I've even watched that because it's on YouTube. And they talk about it on that documentary, and Martin Shaw admits in that documentary that he's never signed off on the repeats because they never negotiated the money correctly with him, and basically what that means is they didn't give him enough money. So it wasn't shown on UK TV for a long, long time. after it was initially, after its first run. Until, and whether you believe it or not, I don't know, but I read while researching it, until Gordon Jackson, who died some years ago, Martin Shaw apparently was reminded after Gordon Jackson had died that his widow could do with the extra money that the repeats on television would provide for her, and apparently that's when he signed it off then and said, okay, yes, you can show it. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it is. I've read that, and that's what it says. So, and then it was allowed to be repeated on television. So the second run of it, my second memories of this being repeated was on things like Men and Motors on Sky TV in the UK. It was on constantly throughout the day. So I remember watching it again then, when I was in my probably mid to late 20s, something like that, maybe. And it was hugely successful again, being repeated. Now, I don't know, and I'd be interested to find out from any of my American viewers if this ever made it over to the States, and if it ever, garnered any kind of popularity over there. I'll be really interested to find that out. But needless to say, this was a hugely popular show in the UK. Iconic to me. There's a few shows that I remember as a child that will stick with me forever. There's this, things like Starsky and Hutch. Then you've got your A-Teams and your Knight Riders, your Airwolves, things like that. But from a UK TV perspective, it was this. There wasn't really another one that I took to. I mean, and this you could get colouring books from this show. You could get books, you started doing toys, things like that, and it was a great show. It had so many great stories. It was really well written, corny as you like. I mean, you wouldn't get away with it these days, some of the things that happened in the show. It is, I suppose you could say, quite sexist at times, and there was a very controversial episode called Klansman that dealt with racism that when you watch now you kind of cringe. Quite racist. I'm very racist. It would never get on TV these days. But they tried to tackle some subjects at the time, and you can judge whether they hit or missed, but you've got to remember, you've got to judge it on the time it was shown, not by today's standards with a show like this. The chemistry between the leads was all brilliant. My understanding is that Martin Shaw and Lewis Collins didn't get on in real life, which added that spark and chemistry. In fact, Lewis Collins wasn't even the first choice for Bodie. It was Anthony Andrews, who actually filmed for a week, but they realised that it wasn't working, so they brought Lewis Collins on board, which Martin Shaw was very unhappy about because he was good friends with Anthony Andrews apparently. So there was that spark and chemistry between them. You always thought they were the best of mates with the relationship they projected on the screen. I thought the unlikability that they obviously had in their personal life did not reflect on screen. They were both really, really good together, Bodie and Doyle. One of the iconic pairings. And when you add in the Cowley, Gordon Jackson mix to it as well, it was perfect, really. And like I say, the episodes were so cool. They were action-packed, some of them. Like I said, they did try and do something different with some of the episodes. Some of them did repeat themselves quite a lot, especially in the first series. There was a lot of hitmen coming over with strange accents and things like that. But a fantastic show. I can't compliment this show enough. It's one of my favourites of all time. And for nostalgia reasons, it always will be. I would be interested to know if somebody who hasn't seen this show, who's, I don't know, in the teens or the 20s, if they ever saw it, what they'd make of it. But for me, it's a classic TV show, one of the greatest of all time. They did try bringing it back in the 90s. I think it was 1998, 1999, something like that. The New Professionals. And it failed miserably, is my understanding. Another side note as well, and it's just reminded me of that slide that's come up. Lewis Collins, who passed away, and I think it was 2013. Who was in the movie Who Dares Wins about the SAS. He actually, as a civilian, passed 21 SAS selection courses, but they would never accept him into the SAS because it was too well known. So he a proper hard man was Lewis Collins, and he was up for the James Bond role as well. Just before Timothy Dalton got it, after Roger Moore retired and they were looking for new Bond, he was very close to being cast as Bond, but apparently Albert Broccoli, the producer of Bond, didn't want him because he thought he looked too thuggish or something. But if you watch him in The Professionals, he would have been a perfect Bond. And I really think he would have been a fantastic James Bond, Lewis Collins. And I think it's a real shame that they didn't take a chance with him, because he would have been fantastic. But it wasn't to be, unfortunately. So yeah, they tried bringing the show back in the 90s. It failed miserably. I think I remember seeing a couple of the shows and I was just appalled as to how bad it was. The only thing they got right in the show that they brought back was they cast Edward Woodward as the Cowley character, even though he wasn't called Cowley. He was like, he was the head of the CI5, and I thought that was a good piece of casting to get Edward Woodward. But the people they got to be like, the Bodie and Doyle type characters, even though they weren't Bodie and Doyle, were shocking. And it was a really bad show. It just ran for one series, about, I think, might be 13-14 episodes. But I don't suggest you seek it out because it was really poor. Why they didn't bring back Bodie and Doyle, even if it were just for guest appearances, I genuinely don't know. I did see an interview while researching this, and you can see there we are, look, the new Professionals. I did see an interview with Lewis Collins about the time when they were bringing back the new show, and the interviewer asked Lewis Collins, "Are you going to be involved?" And he said in the interview, "We're talking, and I'd love to be." So obviously it didn't work out. Maybe he was asking for too much money. I've no idea, but avoid the new Professionals, guys, because it's pretty bad. And I don't think it does justice to the original Professionals at all. And if you go on YouTube, you can see the opening credits as well for the new Professionals. It's really shocking. And that's another thing that's completely iconic about the Professionals, is the theme, the main Professionals theme. It's one of the most iconic of all time, and if you've never heard it, go on YouTube and watch the opening credits to the Professionals. It's fantastic and iconic, as this show is. So for me, guys, the Professionals, brilliant. I'm thoroughly enjoying rewatching them all. I've got through the first 3 DVDs, got quite a few more to go, but I'm absolutely loving them, guys. I really am loving them. And if you're a fan and you remember this back in the day and you're thinking, oh, what a great show that was, you can pick these up so cheap now. Get out there and get the Professionals bought and just get it watched. Iconic show. And any of you youngsters out there, if you want to see how TV used to be, and none of this filtered down twaddle that we get nowadays on a lot of, certainly, British TV, get it watched. It's an absolutely iconic, fantastic show. 9 out of 10. Flawless in so many ways. But yes, it is certainly dated, I will admit that. But it has an incredible amount of charm to it, this show. It really does. The chemistry between all the leads is iconic. Fantastic show. The Professionals, guys. Thank you very much for watching.